Hi, welcome to this short video on modern visual analytics. The purpose of this video is to demonstrate the power of using visual analytics to drive deeper understanding of your audit data and why Tableau is becoming the tool of choice to drive this change. So first, let's take a look at the data that we have for our analysis. It's a simple data set. It contains P-card transaction details. The data is publicly available from the City of Toronto Open Data Program. So feel free to go out there and check out the types of data that they have. But we have the data that we need for our analysis, and hopefully I'll have enough information to answer a simple question that I have of this data, and that is, I want to know if there are transactions occurring during the weekend. So if we look at this data, we can see that we have the transaction ID, we have the date of that transaction, we have an employee ID, which, by the way, it's fictitious. I just made this up. We have the division for the city that the transaction occurred and is tied to. We have the merchant category, other details about the merchant, such as merchant name, merchant type, and then we have the original amount of that transaction. So we've got enough information, I feel like, that we should be able to answer how many transactions there are transactions occurring during the weekend. So to answer that question in Excel, what we typically would want to do is maybe just filter the data. So I've turned on the filters here, but quickly I can see that I don't really have a way of easily changing this so that I can filter to only the weekends. I can get down to the day level for the month and year combination, but I would have to look up what like on a calendar, which ones of these days are actually Saturday and Sunday. So that's not going to work out for me, but maybe I can insert a pivot table, although I don't think that's going to help either, because once again, I don't have a weekend indicator, anything like that in the data set. Maybe I could create a calculation, but frankly, I don't have time to do that. Let me see what I can do here. If I add transaction date to my rows and then the transaction amount to the values, then I've got some information, but once again, I can't really see how many of these transactions are occurring over the weekend, or if any of these transactions are occurring over the weekend. So I'm not going to waste any more time here in Excel. What I want to do is fire up Tableau Desktop, and I've connected to that Excel spreadsheet. And let's just start asking the question of the data in Tableau. So are there any transactions occurring on the weekend? Well, first let's bring our transaction amount out. And now I can see that we have $22 million in transactions that occurred via our procurement cards. Okay, that's fine, but now let's look and see if we have any transactions that occurred on a weekend. That's, once again, very easy to do in Tableau. We're just going to filter down to Saturdays and Sundays. Tableau very elegantly parses through dates and allows us to filter in lots of different and interesting ways out of the box. So now I clearly see that $743,000 of transactions are tied to the weekend. Now the next question that I have is, how many transactions are occurring on the weekends? So let's bring out our transaction ID. I'm going to flip this around, sort my bars, and I can quickly see that in the bottom left of my screen, 5,144 transactions have occurred on the weekend. Not necessarily a terrible thing, but it does make me want to dig in a little bit further. Now I wonder, are any of these transactions occurring on a major holiday? Well, we have a holiday flag. So I'm just going to take that out and drop it onto my color shelf. So very quickly I could see that, in fact, yes, there are. New Year's Day, there was a transaction that was $11,470. And then again on New Year's Day, looks like a different transaction ID, but it's $9,400. That's interesting. So what if we filter out the nulls. Maybe the nulls, there's a lot of nulls. In other words, the nulls are not tied to the holidays, so I'm just going to exclude those. So here we have the bar chart showing us only the transactions that happen on the weekends and the holidays. And if I look at the bottom left of my screen here, Tableau is telling me I have 28 rows. So there are 28 transactions that are tied to holidays and weekends. Actually, I just had another question that popped in my head here. So I'm going to open up another worksheet. I'm going to quickly build out that chart again. So the transaction amount, the transaction date, I want to filter that by the weekdays and then Saturdays and Sundays. Okay, and then I want to bring out my transaction ID once again. And the question I have now is, well, I wonder how many transactions that we have occurring on the weekend that are greater than $10,000. That's a threshold that we have. Any transaction that's over $10,000 should be flagged. Well, why don't I check this out a little bit deeper? So I'm going to bring my transaction amount up to my filter shelf, aggregate that to a sum, and select at least $10,000. So we have 3 transactions that occurred on the weekend that are over $10,000. So I'm just going to rename my worksheet and call it as such. And I will save that analysis for a little bit later. That's a completely different question that I wasn't really thinking about until I saw the holiday weekend transactions. So I'm going to rename this sheet to holidays and maybe ask another few questions of this data. Okay, so I can see very quickly I've got a couple large transactions that happened on New Year's. I have another transaction. These are all relatively small. I'm not going to worry too much about these. Remembrance Day for $435. But I am interested in additional information behind these transactions. For example, the merchant name. So I'm going to drag the merchant name down on my detail. Notice I did not change my visualization, but it did add it to our tooltip. So we can see that Town Inn Suites is the hotel that is tied to these 2 large transactions, whereas Facebook.com is tied to this Remembrance Day transaction. What's the purpose of these transactions? I'm going to add that to detail as well. The purpose of the Facebook transaction is pretty bland. I mean, I can't really tell what that is. I might want to dig into that a little bit more. The purpose for the large hotel expenditures was for a hotel stay for tenants at 200 Wellesley. I'm not sure if that's legitimate or not, but what we might want to do here is also identify the individuals tied to these transactions. And if we can do so, then maybe we want to put these individuals on a watch list and watch them a little bit more closely throughout the year to make sure that nothing strange is going on with their T&E use. So let's take the employee ID and let's drop that onto the detail. Now we can see the employee ID actually making these transactions. And we can put them on a watch list and monitor the situation so that we're not putting our great city of Toronto at risk of nefarious behavior using our P cards. So very quickly, we were able to answer our original question. We discovered new questions of the data, and we were even able to sideline another question for further understanding, which is the transactions greater than $10,000, all in about 5 minutes, right? So the key takeaway here is, and the fundamental difference between data visualization and visual analysis is that data visualization is about designing charts that relate to objectives. Typically, multiple charts are brought together in a dashboard. And Tableau can certainly do this well, but also allows us to bring back the right visualizations quickly and elegantly so that we can iterate and ask additional questions of the data. This is how your brain works. And we call this iterative process the cycle of visual analysis here at Tableau. And there's only one way to experience it for yourself, and that's to go out to our website, download Tableau Desktop, and give it a try yourself. Thanks for watching.